Hello, and welcome to Gnosis. On today's episode, I interviewed George Siegal, a conservative, filmmaker, former meteorologist, and probably most interesting, one of the best bosses I ever had. Now, the question is what makes him the best boss I ever had? Well, he allowed me as an employee to take risks. And he understood that his job was to rainmake. And my job was to create. And our job together was to deliver a vision for our customers. He brought skills to the table that I didn't have. And he taught me those skills. I brought skills to the table that he didn't have. And so we were able to work together in a collaborative situation. Now, after saying all that, I think you will find it interesting what his film is about. It is about the impacts of climate change and weather on the way we live now. It's about asking our government to do the things that our businesses are unwilling to do. So, without further ado, this is George Siegal, and we discuss his film, The Last House Standing. This was an audio-only interview, and the purpose of this lead-in is so that you can see me. But what I will be showing is footage from his premiere of the film for the first time in front of an audience because previously it had been scheduled at 16 film festivals and because of the pandemic was never shown for an audience. So he was able to get an audience in Charleston, South Carolina. I happened to meet him there. He's from Tampa. And it was a wonderful time. And he got to share his film and receive questions. It was fantastic. Welcome to the show, folks. Today I have George Siegal here with me. George, if you would say hello to the...
Hey, how's everybody doing?
And fun fact... George was one of my favorite bosses of all time.
Ah, that's so kind. Here's your money.
He was, one of the great things about him is he would let me take a risk as long as it wasn't too expensive.
We would always have a boundary. Go down that road, but if you're going too far, let me know where you're going.
Yeah. So we produced a animated TV commercial for a small wildlife ranch. He allowed me to be a terrible videographer until I learned how to do it. And, he still hires me from time to time, even though I left him for another boss.
I believe in chances for people. I believe that if you have people that sometimes the devil is better than the one you don't. And when you know what people are capable of, when I would give you that extra rope, you would generally come back with something better. And, I like to work with people like that.
Yeah. That's, so now that we've established how we know each other, we just got out of watching a film that you produced. About disaster, about being resilient in the face of disasters, about revealing the true cost of not thinking of tomorrow, today. My thoughts after watching it is that climate change, regardless of the source, we need to maybe start paying attention to it and quit trying to ignore what might be coming. Did I miss anything so far?
Well, that would be the hardest fix out of everything if people watch the film. If you say, okay, the solution is to reverse climate change, First of all, people are going to argue with you whether or not they even believe that climate change is a problem. You'll have people that will show you statistics saying, well, 100 years ago, this was still going on. There were powerful storms. So one of the arguments that I like is, okay, so now we're all living closer to the ocean. We're living out in the woods. We're living in the plains. We're growing into places where maybe a disaster wouldn't have affected anybody in the past. And so now a lot of people are getting wiped out. So yes, do we need to worry about climate and what we're doing to it? Absolutely. But that's not the fix to what the film's about, because we could just build better houses. We could have people care more about what they buy. And it has to be fixed differently, because if I said to you, hey, Trinity, go buy that house, you're gonna, it's perfect for you and your family, but first we got to solve climate change. It's not going to happen in your lifetime.
That's very true. That's very true. When I'm thinking about that, and based on what you just said, what happens to those that are living in rental properties that, they have no control over things? It's not, most of America doesn't get to pick how they build their houses. So what do we do about that?
Well, when you rent a place, there's questions you should be asking about that place. I live in Tampa, Florida, and within a mile of my house, they're building apartments out of wood, entirely out of wood, in an area that is a bullseye for a major hurricane. And you have other apartments that we've seen examples of this in the Midwest, where they were fire dangers that were built for people and they weren't properly done. The thing we have when we rent an apartment is we think, well, somebody built this, it's a big building, it's got to be safe. And you have no idea, did they do the fire escapes properly? Is it, what is the evacuation process for this building? How fast would this building burn? How safe am I in this unit in this particular spot? I think you have to ask questions about any place you live. Now, obviously, if you're in financial struggles and you have to just find a place to live, the dynamics change of what you can be responsible for, but you still need to ask questions. You still need to know all these things that most people don't think about, because we blindly go through life just assuming that somebody is doing their job and we're going to be okay. And I am not one of those people. I assume people aren't doing their job. And every time I let them just do their job without having some knowledge about it, I've paid the price.
So we definitely need to have more education about how to spot risk. But, if I'm looking at an apartment complex, all I can do is not rent that place, right? And if I'm looking at a rental home, I can just not rent that home. But what is the mechanism that I would, here in the United States, what is the mechanism to achieve resiliency in our infrastructure? Who is responsible for that for all of us?
Well, if you watch the film, you'll hear a gentleman who's a builder say it's up to the people buying the house to ask for all the safety features. In all due respect, that's baloney. Because if I have to all of a sudden become an architect or an engineer to know that you're building something good for me, then why do I need you? And I think builders as a group, there's good ones and there's bad ones, but as a group, and I've worked was running a construction business, a decorative concrete business in San Antonio for a little while, San Antonio, Texas. And first of all, you're getting people that working for you that are making minimum wage. Right. You're getting people that aren't trained properly, and they're out there doing jobs that who's accountable for what they're doing. So you're getting a substandard level of work to begin with. Builders are in the business to make money. They have a lobbying industry to get codes as low as possible so they can build less expensive properties so they can sell more. So there's nothing on that side that makes you go, oh, I can trust those guys. They're going to do something really good. So you need to hire a great inspector if you're buying a place. If you're renting a place, make sure you have good insurance and be careful where you keep your most valuable things. Because if you're living in a rental house, maybe that house is going to go up in flames or get blown away with a strong wind. That's why you want insurance. That's why you want to have a way to evacuate if there's a problem. But you need to take more interest in where you're living and what the risks are. Walk around the neighborhood, ask questions, find out the history of that area. A lot of that's available online. When we were moving to Tampa, our realtor took us to a house. She said, oh, this is beautiful, this is a really good builder. And we got out and we're looking at it, and a neighbor's walking by. I said, hey, tell me about this. And he goes, you don't want to buy that house. And they go, why not? He goes, because the water comes up to the front door every time it rains.
Oh, yeah.
We got in the car and we're out of there in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's just by stopping a guy walking by. Ask questions. Don't be the accidental tourist that just, things just happen to you because you don't ask questions. Like I say, everything I've ever owned, I could tell you what I thought the problem was and how it's come back to bite me because I didn't do anything about it. And it's a lot easier to say no and walk away than it is to inherit somebody's problem and then you be the one that's responsible for getting rid of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm watching your film, The Last House Standing. You can find that on thelasthousestanding.com.
.org.
.org.
Yeah, they want too much money to sell me the .com, so I didn't buy it.
So please go check out the film. It's good food for thought, and I would say it doesn't matter where you are on the financial spectrum. Being informed is probably better than being ignorant in this particular case.
Well, what you see happen, a lot of times the people that have the least can least afford to lose what they have, and they're the ones that are victims, and who's looking out for them? Quite often these are the folks that don't have insurance on their valuables, so whatever they do have is lost and can never be replaced. It's just as bad. We featured in the film, some of those people had means. They were not hurting financially. They might be now, but the things they lost you can't replace. They're still as shell-shocked as anybody else. They may have a better path to recovery, but in a lot of communities, the people who are struggling financially are the ones that get lost in the shuffle, and that shouldn't happen.
Well, if one of the stories in there, he's a mayor of Malibu. If you were to think of a place in the country where you would think that the mayor of the town has to be doing all right, Malibu would definitely pop up in your list of places, right? But his story is that he put all his money into his house. He owed no money on it. So it was his outright. No mortgage to anyone. It's basically his wealth, right? All of it anchored there. It gets completely burned down due to a wildfire caused either by human power lines, negligence, whatever the reason. And now he has nothing because he didn't owe the bank money. So the insurance company didn't fear the lawyers from the bank coming to get the insurance money.
Yeah, they can make him wait. And that happens a lot. Years ago, not to get on a completely side story, but we had travelers insurance, which was health insurance. And they got sued for this and lost a fortune because they were denying every claim. And when you deny claims, some people will refile, a lot of people won't. So they were playing a percentages game that they would save millions and millions of dollars, which they end up having to pay in fines later. So in this case, because they didn't have to fight Bank of America or Wells Fargo mortgage, the insurance company said, we'll see you in court to collect your money. Now, he'll win in court. I have to follow up. I haven't been able to get in touch with him. But it's not right. He shouldn't have to be made a victim because some big corporate muckety-muck could be a bully and get away with it.
Right. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Like, why do you have to justify an insurance claim on a natural disaster? What do you think is the economic reason other than greed? Why is that an issue?
Have you ever made a claim on insurance? Their goal is not to pay you.
Right.
Their goal is to find a way that you did something wrong so you don't get the money.
Right.
They don't it's not like the commercials where they come out there and they're happy to help you rebuild and you pat them on the back and you love your insurance agent. Maybe your agent, on the agent level, they might be great people. As a corporation, they're in it to make money. Even in disaster years, a lot of them make a lot of money, and their goal is not to pay you. So I tell people, don't give them a reason. Understand your policy. Understand your deductible. Understand what you're covered for. When I worked in Detroit in television news years ago, people would get flooded every year, and there were stories of people who would then set their house on fire to try to collect the damage because they had insurance for fire, but they did not have flood insurance. And that's horrible to be in that position because now you're committing a crime to try to get money to rebuild your life. And so the moral of the story is have the right insurance. Even if that means giving up something else somewhere in your life, just because you had a good year where there's no disaster, don't take your insurance off and assume the next year is going to be great too.
Right.
Nobody plans on getting in an accident. Nobody plans on a disaster, but you need to.
Do you think the insurance industry sees it as a problem that, sure, you're telling me to get insurance, but in the just 2 breaths before that, you were saying the insurance is going to try and fuck you over?
But you have to make it difficult for them to do. How can they screw you over? Well, maybe you say you have a bunch of things that they don't have pictures of or proof that you even own. You got to take pictures of everything. So if you have a stereo and a big screen TV and all these valuable shoes that you collect and maybe a fur coat or whatever you have, show them that you have it. Don't just expect them to take your word for it when they're writing millions of dollars to everybody else who's lost stuff. Turn your paperwork in properly. Know what your deductible is. Know what you're covered for. If your area is prone for hurricanes, find out if there's a named storm deductible added onto your policy where all of a sudden you got to have the first $20,000 out of your pocket before they're going to pay anything. So most people, as you saw in the film, in Mexico Beach, Florida, didn't even read their insurance policies. They had no idea what was in it. You just assume, and you're sitting there, I got insurance, but you don't know. You get in a car accident, you didn't know you had a $2,000 deductible.
Right.
That's a big difference between that and a $250. And, did they write you up as fault versus not fault? I mean, there's so many things. Ask questions. Don't make it easy for them to not pay you.
Do you think there is a policy situation that could maybe fix this? Like, I don't know. If I pay into insurance and there is a national claim, there's an obvious claim that I could make on my insurance. They should just pay me, right?
Well, but it's like anything else. If you don't have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, it's easier to get delays. What we learned in a report that was just done in Mexico Beach was people who had flood insurance and homeowners insurance were the last people to get paid their damages. And you would think, wow, they have both insurances they're supposed to have. These people are in the best position. Well, they'll eventually get their money, but the flood insurance people want the homeowners to pay. The homeowners people want the flood people to pay. Well, the government could solve that since FEMA is running the flood program. They're farming it out, but they're still the source. How about saying our priority is taking care of the people, and we can fight it out later. But let's not make these victims live in a tent for another year or live in a hotel or be displaced. But, who's looking out for us?
Right.
I don't know. I don't see many people. I don't see many heroes out there.
That brings me up to another point. Do you think that the disaster recovery industry, are they beholden to us, or are politicians beholden to them?
Well, the cynic in me would say that they're not beholden to us. We're not doing anything for them. We're not stuffing their pockets and vice versa.
But we are. We're paying all their insurance fees.
That's a small part of it, though. You're $2,000 a year, and then you go in and make a claim for $150,000. I mean, it all gets pooled together. What I'm saying is, I'm not for a lot of government regulation. I'm not for us telling them what to do. I'm saying, as consumers, let's ask questions so we understand what we're actually buying. And if it doesn't feel right or smell right, find a different insurance agent that can explain it to you so at least you know what you have. Put yourself in the best position. If it's some guy selling insurance out of a van and it's not even a company that's highly rated, there's a chance that a disaster is going to put them under. Sometimes you want a company that has some backing behind it so they have money to pay the claim. Because like I say, that few $1,000s you might be paying a year doesn't come close to what they're going to have to pay you if your house is destroyed.
Right.
But that's why you have the insurance. So you want to make sure there's something behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. My one experience with using homeowners insurance I've got two. In my house, a pipe broke and my kitchen collapsed, and so I had to rebuild that. And then the other time I woke up at 3 a.m. and my ceiling collapsed in the living room. And, it turned out to be the roof, and USAA cut the check. They were actually really great. And this is not a commercial for USAA.
But they are good. They're one of the better guys.
Yeah.
Their adjusters care.
Right.
They're really nice and responsive when you talk to them on the phone. Unfortunately, they're not a good option in Florida because they can't compete with some of the local companies. So I had to stop using them for homeowners insurance. But they were always great to deal with.
Yeah. The other part of this, the reason why they're always trying to not pay claims is scam artists. I mean, the first thing that happens if a tornado comes through is someone shows up to your door. Do you want me to do a roof inspection? Oh, yeah. Oh, there's horrible damage up on your roof. We need to totally redo your roof. Oh, okay. Yeah. How do we do that? Well, you submit this claim, and then you do this and do this. And then I had my roof redone, and I hired. I thought the guy was straight up, right? But I said, before I pay you the last little bit, I'm gonna pay for an inspector. Don't worry about it. You don't have to cover the cost. I'll just pay for it because I want him to work for me, and I'm just gonna have him come out and take a look at the roof. And so the inspector came out and took a look at the roof, found problems, said this $5 thing, if he had fixed it before he had put all the new roofing tiles on there, it would have been a $5 repair. But now they would have to rip up everything and put this in. So I hire the contract. I tell the contractor, I'm not giving you another dollar until you fix these things, and then I'll have my inspector come back out and take a look at it, and then I'll pay you that moment, right?
How'd that work out?
Well, a random stranger shows up at my house wearing a fluorescent vest, walking around on the ground. Oh, yeah, I'm a city inspector. I go, oh, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, why are you on my property? I didn't give you permission to be on my property. Why didn't you call and ask for permission to be on here? Well, I can be wherever I want. I said, okay. Are you inspecting the roof? Yes, yeah. Are you going to get a ladder and go up there and look? No. I'm not allowed to get on the roof to inspect the roof. I'm like, that seems like there is a fundamental problem with your job.
A little fishy.
And then all of a sudden I get a lien on my house. And I told the guy, I don't care. You can have a lien on my house. I'm not going to pay you. You've already put the roof up. If you want the rest of the money, you're going to fix the problems. But I had the wherewithal to stand on that. And I had the bullshit detector to realize that someone that's standing on the ground walking around claiming to be a city inspector is probably either his cousin or the cousin of his foreman. And, so the point of this story is to talk about why insurance companies don't want to pay out. The scam artists, the guys that show up and say, give me the money up front, I'll go buy the materials, I'll get the job done, and then they disappear without your money.
Well, even on a smaller level, I know friends who, when their car gets broken into, and your deductible might be $250, all of a sudden, back in the day, I had a lot of cassettes and DVDs in my car,
right? And
they were stolen, and they were worth this because you didn't want to pay the deductible. You wanted to pad it with things that weren't actually missing. So there's all kinds of fraud. I'm not saying they don't have a right to be cynical, but when push comes to shove and there's a disaster, we still need them.
True.
I think one of the worst things in a disaster is that assignment of benefits where the contractor can get the insurance assigned to him. Now, on one hand, that's his way of guaranteeing he's going to get paid.
Right.
But you as the homeowner are just at this guy's mercy.
Right. Yeah,
because they take your money and they'll never show up. I had people in Mexico Beach where they said that windows were ordered, the roof tiles, all this stuff. That was never ordered. The guy that lied to them is in jail now. And that's horrible. So not only are you a victim of the storm, now you're a victim of fraud.
Right.
And it's just not right. It's very sad.
And so what in the film, I don't want to give all the secrets away, but there was a lot of talk about codes, right? The basic requirements of what is considered a safe and useful building. Not usefulness is actually not in there. It's just safe. So, what is, or what did you discover is the better way to affect change? Or what did you learn might be a way to do that?
Well, it takes a long time to change a building code. There's always a lot of fighting over it. There's people pulling at the people that make that decision from both sides. Some don't want it stronger, some want it stronger. And the reality is you have to look at what is code going to save. A lot of houses are built with the thought in mind that you won't die in the house, that it won't kill you, but it doesn't mean you'll be able to still live in the house after the disaster. So codes, in many cases, aren't even built to withstand the hazards that they were put in place for. The best example is Mexico Beach. The building code had the flood level, I don't remember the exact number, but they had a storm surge of 14 feet. They had a wind rating for new structures of 130 miles an hour. Well, they got hit by a Category 5 hurricane with 165 mile an hour winds, and most of the structures there were built before the 130 mile code came in. So they probably were built to withstand 100, 110. So they were devastated by that. They had $25 billion in damage that they had to clean up. So in construction, they had like $50 million in damage to clean up. But the example of that is when they changed the building code, they raised the wind rating to 140 miles an hour. That's insane. I mean, I understand if you listen to our film, watch the film, Henk Ovink, one of the experts in there, talks about how much can you bunker your community? How much can you fortress it? And what are you going to spend?
Right.
You know, who can do that? But they do it in South Florida. They do it in areas where those houses have a lot less damage down there than they do in other parts of the Gulf Coast and Atlantic. So when you're rebuilding to a standard that won't even protect you from what wiped you out, I think you got a problem. So building codes need to be tougher.
Right.
Because most people don't want to spend the money. And another thing builders do, say I'm building a tract home, and I won't throw any of these guys under the bus, but you know who these guys are, men and women, whatever. And you want to do a change to their plans. They price it so high, you're discouraged from doing it. So if you went to your tract builder and said, look, I want you to reinforce the garage, and I want you to bracket the roof, they're going to go, no, now I got to go hire somebody to do this because I can't have the regular crew of guys do this. And so they charge you an extremely high amount where, well, it's going to cost you $50,000. So you go, no, okay, I won't do it. So now you have a house that's not as safe as it could be. So if you're willing to walk away, and if you do but nobody else does, then you're just the guy that's not going to get the house.
Right.
But at least you won't get screwed.
Right. Well, as long as you can get another house that does meet those codes.
Sure. Or maybe renting then becomes a better option if you can't buy something safe. Or maybe you find a way to retrofit it. I'm not saying everybody can do this.
Right.
And that's why the last line of defense is having insurance and having a plan for evacuation and keeping your family safe. But if you reward somebody else's mediocrity, if you let some builder build a crappy house, you buy it from them, someday you're going to get rid of it. And you better hope the next people are as clueless as you are.
Right.
And what I found with houses when I've done this is they always find my weakest link. You know, if I have a house where I had a house where the driveway was a little steep so somebody couldn't get an expensive sports car in. That cost me a lot of money because that was the buyer for the house. And we knew that when we were putting it in, but it would cost a little more to level it. And then another house, we were doing a spec house, and it didn't have a carport. That's the number one complaint people had because they go, you're asking me to pay this for the house. I have a nice car. How are you going to keep it safe in a hailstorm? Lost a lot of money by not being able to get those buyers. Not enough closet space, and people coming through would write on the form, Matt needs more closet space. So you can think a lot of these things in advance and go, well, you know, I'm going to pay for it later, so why reward these people for doing such a crappy job?
Yeah. How hard is it or in your experience, how hard is it to go after a builder for a shit job?
Some of the stuff I can't talk about because of non-disclosure agreements. It's very difficult, and it depends on the state you're in, because in some states they have a law put in where you can only go to arbitration, and arbitration is nowhere near the same. I mean, no builder wants to go before a jury because everybody's going to go, screw that guy.
Right.
You know, he's been doing it to everybody for years, and you'll get a fortune. You'll come out great. Everybody will sue those guys. So they make you go to arbitration, and then if you want to get your money, you have to sign something saying you can't talk about them. And so, and also, if they go out of business, they start the business again a few days later with a different name to their company. There was a guy in Texas who was building pools. We were actually going to feature him in a TV show we were putting together, and he was going and getting money for jobs and then doing other jobs with it. But the line was getting twisted because he wasn't getting to people that had taken his money,
right.
that he had taken their money, and so he ended up in jail. Because he was just he was running a Ponzi scheme, just going around collecting money from people, but not doing the job. But he had a few good jobs, so he could show you his amazing work, and you'd go, God, this guy builds a great pool. Because all the bad stories take a while to get out there.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of the bad stories never get out there because people can't talk about them.
Yeah, I remember a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, that was going to start a website and an entire TV show about how bad his builder was. But for some reason, that never happened. I don't know why.
There's probably a very good reason. You know, I wanted to start this show. I thought it would be a great idea called Needle in a Haystack. And people would have me come out there, and I would find their weakest link where their problem was that they might never find, because I just find that stuff.
Right.
but I never did it. Would have been a good idea.
Yeah. So, that brings us up to an interesting thing, because you're as you said, you're a small government guy. You're a guy that's doesn't like being fettered too much. You want to just do what you need to do, and my understanding of the way you work is you're honest, so you expect other people to be honest, and you've found out that they're not.
Many times.
And so we've been dancing around this idea that there's a sense of ownership that you have to take, right? You have to be personally responsible, because you're the one that, no matter what, no one's going to stand there and live in your house and deal with the leaks or deal with the floods or the hurricane damage that has happened, because you're the one that owns that house. What is the role of government legitimately, and from a small government perspective, what is the role of government in this scenario?
To put the framework in place for us to be able to not need them for as many things as possible. So to put out things, so that might be to have a stronger building code so people can't be taken advantage of. That might be to, I like government to put something in place and get out of the way, but not be there to regulate it. Because if they're going to go hire millions of people to run something they put together, it just becomes a bunch of money being thrown away. Tell me government programs that are good, that are big programs, that are good and successful. You may be able to come up with some. I don't know of any off the top of my head. They inevitably have problems.
Tennessee Valley rural electrification.
I thought you were going to say the post office. I want my mail to come tomorrow. Because we have a great mailman.
Right.
But the Postal Service has I found a Facebook post that I did years ago, and I said, next time I want to get something there, I'm just going to slap it on a donkey's ass and send him on his way, and it'll have the same chance of getting there as that package that never got delivered.
Right.
So anything they do, they lose millions of dollars every year, the post office does.
Well, but it's not a for-profit corporation.
But it's not
a service.
the idea to lose money either. So you don't want services that cost billions of dollars.
Right. I don't know. Here's my thinking on it. If you're doing a service, and the point of the service is to serve the public, right? Then how do you, are you supposed to? Okay. Let me give
let me tell you why
context.
let me just jump in and tell you why I think you're wrong with that.
Okay.
Because you have a budget for that service. The post office doesn't just get a blank check to do whatever they want. They're told this is your budget.
Right.
Now, if they exceed it by inefficiency and don't meet that budget, that's a problem. And what I would say is when programs get too big and bloated and people start using it as their own personal sieve to generate money,
Right.
that's where it becomes a problem. I think if they're smaller setups, it would work better. And if you're going to say, well, tell me about Amazon and how that works. I mean, your packages get there in a couple days.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of things that are bad about them. When I think about all the small local business guys that can't compete with that, or how you put a great product on Amazon and then a week later they come up with their own version of your product, which I think they are going to stop doing. They announced recently.
Oh, well, that's nice of them to voluntarily stop screwing over the people that they have given access to their platform.
And you see that all the time. You see something that maybe you see in an ad somewhere, and then you see Amazon's version of it. There's no way we can compete with that.
Right.
And so I guess it would be helpful. It would make my point better if I had better examples of why I don't like what is being done.
Right.
But I can tell you the way it's being done isn't working.
Okay. Well,
Doesn't mean I have a better idea.
I think no matter who you are in the United States, the only people that think things are working fine are post office higher ups and the people that get government contracts to fulfill post office support.
And you could take that to a lot of other some of these government contracts that people get, and the money that they throw it. When you read when a bill passes and then you see all the little things below it that got funded because of that bill,
right?
It would make most people sick.
Yeah. So, we've covered a pretty big subject. The climate, disaster recovery, insurance, and we've done we've covered the role that government could play with codes, because codes aren't laws. Codes are suggestions that must be enforced, right? It's something that could be changed very easily on a local level. It's one of the few things that is probably within completely local control, except for FEMA flood zone situations. That's a federal situation.
Yeah, we saw in Moore, Oklahoma, how many years did it take them to wake up and change the building code? They did.
Right.
It took a long time. They had 9 tornadoes before they go, whoa, we could solve a lot of this damage by tightening the code. And then they said, and if we didn't, people probably still would build the same crappy houses as they were before.
Right.
So they can make a huge difference. They can make a big difference.
Do you think education would make a dent in these things if we educated people on risk and weather and climate impacts? Do you think that is probably an answer?
Yes, and I think because you see it. Remember, I had a podcast guest on last week, or he's on this week actually, and what he talked about remember all those commercials with the crash dummies, and they would show how dangerous cars are and what would happen to people. And that whole organization, that whole marketing campaign led to automotive, that you have to put airbags in cars. You have to put the seat belts, and the crash ratings is something they compete to have the highest one, because it was made a big deal. Right. Much like green products and healthy eating and those things, it takes people hearing about it and hearing about it. So if we had commercials that showed how dangerous your house was and the true cost of not doing something, I think that would be huge, but somebody's got to want to pay for it.
So is that a government responsibility? It's not an industry responsibility.
It is an industry responsibility. Can you imagine if the insurance companies all got together and educated people how to have safer houses, how many less claims they might have to pay? I couldn't get one insurance company to give me a nickel when I made my film. They just said, nah, we don't care about this.
Right.
Now, they didn't even take me seriously. It would have been a perfect film for them to. You would think if an insurance company wanted to be paying less claims, they would want proactive people living in those houses who avoided damage. I don't think of a more logical connection on anything than that, and I don't see them spending money on it. All they do is make it look like they're good guys who are there to help you. And that doesn't tell me why I need to do things. It just tells me, oh, good, if something happens, they'll come out and shake my hand and play with my kids. So what?
That sounds a little creepy, actually.
You see it. You see it. Those State Farm commercials, the agent's always there.
Yeah. Jake, we're calling you out.
Yeah.
You're not really a value add in our situation.
No.
Although I'm sure Jake is a fine person as an individual.
Absolutely.
So we're sitting in a what feels like a difficult spot, right? We're saying that industry has responsibilities to the client or to the customer. We're saying that we have responsibilities to make sure we're not getting duped and to make sure that folks do what they're supposed to do. The weather has a responsibility to do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these problems aren't new. Nothing that we talked about today are new. That's not what you covered in your film's not new. Call of the Wild, the author of Call of the Wild, Jack London, one of my heroes. He realized that earthquakes were a problem in California, and so he designed a house to survive an earthquake. But he trusted his builder, and they used substandard materials in building his house. And so all the money he made as an author went collapse and burned up. He was literally trying to build the last house standing, and because of bad contractors, was wiped out.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that. I mean, the incompetence of people can undermine the greatest of plans. So I've seen houses where they were built with hurricane brackets, and then you go in and look at them, and the brackets weren't installed properly. And so, yes, there's a lot of corporate responsibility that could take place. I had a woman on a few weeks ago who was an HR expert, and she talked about how important it is for companies to create the right culture and train people properly. And I said, well, a lot of them are afraid to do that because you're going to train somebody they're going to end up leaving, like how I trained you and you ended up leaving me.
Right, yeah.
And that happens all the time. So what's the answer? And she said, but that's not true. Because if you train people, They're going to do a better job. When they leave, they'll tell people about the great job and the great workplace you had, and it'll help your company overall. And the way she said it certainly convinced me that we don't train people properly. And so if you're paying somebody $10 an hour to install something that they don't even understand what the heck they're doing, you have a problem. So companies need to take more responsibility. There needs to be a pride. Why does Habitat for Humanity build houses that survive disasters? More attention to detail.
Right.
The crew that's out there is there because they want to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's huge.
And if you're going to get a home from Habitat for Humanity, you actually have to be a part of the build crew.
Yeah, and they're helping people that might be homeless or not have a home. They don't want to see that go away.
Right.
In the first time the wind blows strong, but it's just done better.
Right.
There's more. They care and there's thought. It's not about profits and money.
But you just so that right there is a problem for me as a capitalist, because if I'm a capitalist, the point of everything is to make money. It's not to do good.
And it means you don't have to have pride in workmanship and want it to be around. Well, are you building me a house to have me keep my house or to come back and rebuild it in a few years when it gets destroyed?
I'm building you a house because I'm getting paid to build you a house.
And then I would say that's not the builder I want to hire. I want to build a guy that I don't mind him making money, but I want him to care.
Oh, okay. Well, so that suggests something other than a pure capitalist mindset, though.
You know, I consider myself a capitalist, but I'm a compassionate capitalist. I don't want corporations ripping people off. I don't want the world like Mr. Robot. I want to see people that actually, but we can hold them to that. And how do you do that? If you hire a builder and they don't want you on the job site, I wouldn't work with them.
Right.
I had this one a-hole build me a house one time in San Antonio, and they were doing a terrible job. And I called him out to meet with me, and he comes out with one of the stooges that he works with because he wanted to show this guy how he was going to put me in my place.
Right.
And he started yelling at me, so I was yelling back. And he goes, I don't need another foreman working for my company. And I said, well, I'd be the only foreman you have working for your company. I'm paying you a lot of money. I expect you to build the freaking house the right way. And we just were screaming at each other. But I was willing to walk away. I wasn't going to take that because I knew they weren't doing a good job.
Right.
They weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And there's no non-disclosure there, so I can talk about this guy.
Great.
So the point is, you want people who care. If they don't seem to care, don't do business with them. You have the choice to walk away.
Yeah, that's...
Now, that doesn't always work if you're dealing with Verizon.
Right, yeah,
They're not going to care. I had DirecTV tell me one time, I said, you give new customers a better deal than me, and I've been with you for 10 years. And they go, we value new customers more. The person was honest with me. And I said, well, and they go, and some people are paying more than you, Mr. Siegal. I said, wow, that makes me feel great. So you can just screw me and take advantage of me and all this stuff. So I just left. I went to another company. They're fine. They're still in business last I checked.
Yeah.
But I don't have to deal with their BS.
Yeah, that's, if you can find me a cell phone company that isn't full of BS, then we'll talk off air. I just need to get.
I don't know that they exist because Verizon was in the Panhandle for Hurricane Michael.
Right.
They hate Verizon up there because they just disappeared on them, and there were people that were just everybody complained about how there was no cell phone service for all this time. They were given the runaround by them. They had a PR nightmare up there.
That's a mess. So. What is literally the steps that we can take to make the world better in this aspect? What do we need to do? What is our levers of power?
Become your own best advocate. And I've interviewed a lot of people for my podcast that are disaster preppers and people that are in that line of work. And they say, you are your own true first responder.
Right.
When something bad happens, you're the one that's going to deal with it first. So if you're buying a house, know what you're getting. If you're buying a car, do your research. The best thing you can do right now, because the car industry is just insane, is they're doing that add-on fee or MSRP plus. Find a dealer that doesn't do that and don't reward some asshole who's going to tack on $10,000 to your car because he or she can. You have to care enough to do your own work on your end. And that means read up on the product, understand what your rights are, what you can expect. And you have to become your own best advocate. You can't assume somebody's looking out for you.
Should that approach also affect the way you vote?
Well, I would. Did you ever see the movie Designated Survivor? Not the movie, TV show with Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They have a designated survivor, and the Capitol blew up, and that was on a State of the Union. So the president was killed, all the people in Congress and the Senate, everybody died, and they had to start over. And this guy ended up being president, who was a low-level government guy. And the idea of starting over, but without tragedy, we need to put people in office who we feel are doing it because they care about us and not care about themselves. So I'm cynical about the whole political process. There's not very many people that I look at and go, that man or woman really cares about us.
So how do we what are your criteria for deciphering that? Who is it? Someone you would know personally, or is it a criteria of style of leadership? Like, how do we find these good people, support them, get them into office, even though they don't have the financial resources?
I don't think it's possible unless the system changes, unless there's I had another guy the reason I'm doing a podcast is these interesting people I met. I had a guy on, Doug Hughes, who was the gentleman who landed his gyrocopter on the Capitol lawn, ended up doing a little jail time for it, and he was delivering letters to Congress saying they need
jail time.
A little jail time. I think he did a couple months, but still, that's tough. He had to. The idea is to get money out of politics, to get the control that people are bought and paid for. Once they get to Washington, most of those people leave richer than when they got there. And they're public servants that are there serving the people, yet they find out about the latest stock trades. They get money from oil and gas and all these people that finance them and sway them to support what they want to do. How do you get that out of there? Unless we can change laws that say you can't profit from being a politician. Get people truly there that want to help,
right? That
are there because they care about everybody. Right. If you're elected the senator of in Florida, you don't just represent the party that voted you in. You're now the senator for the state of Florida. You should care about everybody. And I don't know how you get to that. It frustrates me. So I'm not happy with anybody and how it's run. I'm not. And if you're going to complain, at least have a solution. That's not an easy fix.
Yeah. So how do we? I want to believe that our system is salvageable, right? I served in the military. I literally became the property of the United States for a period of time. And the point of that is so that they can send you somewhere and you can die, and they have full authority to do that, right? So I look at my brothers and sisters that have fought in combat and have come back and, have left pieces of themselves on the battlefield. I want to believe that has meaning, some level. So how do we make this system? If you could just give me one idea that you might have out of you've got a lot of experience, you've dealt with a lot of things, you've got a unique perspective to mine. How can we make the system work? How do we make it work?
I wish there was an easy answer for that. When I hear about horror stories with veterans and how they're not supported with the problems they come back with the injuries they come back with, to me it's just heartbreaking. It makes me sick because those were people that were willing to risk their life for their country for whatever reason.
Right.
I know some people that have gone in the military because they wanted the education, and then a war comes up, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay, now you got to go risk your life. And they're still making a huge sacrifice that I wouldn't have been able to make. I wasn't brave enough to make that kind of sacrifice. So I don't know. They should never have problems. They should be treated like heroes. They should be treated with respect, and things shouldn't be difficult for them to get a lot of the things that they need.
Right.
So when you see that, when you hear about the VA and all the problems that they have, like I say, it doesn't make me hopeful because I don't have an easy solution for this. Because then, that's how money gets misappropriated all the time.
Right. Yeah. I laughed when Mr. Obama was talking about how great the VA was because he's obviously never had to go. And my argument against my more left friends about socialized medicine is you've never had to deal with the VA. Because the point of, if you think an insurance company is bad about denying you your claim, before you can get anything in the VA, you have to claim it 3 times. The first time you get told no, the second time they insult you, and the third time they go, oh well, you're right, but they won't give it to you for the injury that you're claiming. They'll give you some approved injury. So like, say you're coming in because you've been irradiated by a radio while you were pregnant, and instead of giving you that, they remove those records. Pregnancy is one of the most documented processes in medical care, and they removed, supposedly you go from finding out you're pregnant to the baby being born, and in between there is when you were exposed to radiation, but that's not in your record anymore. But they give you something for a car accident. I mean, great. I'm glad that I got something, but you and I both know why you're not giving me the real thing.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that shouldn't happen. It's just, you hear stories like that, and it just makes you question a lot of things.
Right.
And, like I say, there's no easy solutions for stuff like that. When I have friends that complain about the medical system and how everybody should have health care, on the surface, that's sure. Can you imagine a family that can't have any insurance and can't afford that? That's horrible. People shouldn't have to suffer in this country. But then they'll cite, oh, well, the way they do it over in country X, it's perfect. Right. Go live there. If the grass is always greener, all those people that say, it's better somewhere else, they're not leaving.
Right.
All the people that say, look at Canada, people from Canada come here to have surgeries and get things done.
True.
So, like I say, the grass is always greener. I just wish people... I'm not telling you other countries do things better than us. I'm saying we can do things better.
Right.
The people that really hate it and are throwing stuff out there like we're terrible and blah, 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 nobody's stopping you from leaving.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I'm wandering here. So let me... Why don't you? I tell you what. I'm gonna throw a wrench in this. Why don't you ask me a question?
How would you fix it?
Well, first I would start by going to each state and passing a fair vote system, which allows you to pick 3 or 5 of your choices. They can all be 5 one choice, or you can go, I like this guy, I like this guy, I like this girl, and I like this girl, right? And then the way the vote gets counted is if your first choice doesn't get enough votes, that vote falls to your second choice. If your second choice doesn't get enough votes, then that vote falls to your third choice. And then that way, no matter what, whoever you have voted for in that string should have won election. They have this in Maine. They have this in New York City for the mayoral race.
Yeah, how's that all working out? Can you get 5 good people?
Well, the goal would be to get people that are willing to work together because they understand that shitting on candidate number 5 could cost you the winning vote when candidate number 5 is someone's first choice, right? So it in other words, it allows you to be responsive to all voters because the idea is that you want to be the most likable so that you're at least someone's second choice. It's not about being someone's first choice. It's about being someone's acceptable second and third choice. And then you're able to get away from the lesser of two evils argument, right? Because if you only have 2 choices, then you got to pick one. But if I could pick any one of the 5 guys, then, whoever the third choice is that's on the list of, well, all right, if these other 2 don't work out, I'd rather have the third guy. That third guy has a real chance of winning the majority because he's appealed to the most people at some point down the rank, but he didn't have to be nasty and cruel and crap on their first choice.
It's interesting if you could find enough people to fill that up. What happens, we say we have 3 parties in this country, usually on a ballot, there's 3 parties that are there for a presidential election, but realistically only 2 of them are competitive. So the people I know that put their vote on the 3rd candidate and say, well, it's a protest vote, in a way they're voting with that vote. So it has to work.
They're advocating a choice, what you're saying.
But by abdicating a choice, you're allowing if all those people said, well, I'm just going to vote for this person who has no chance of winning, if they could get behind one of the other candidates, they might have been able to make a difference. But maybe they're so unappealing. I get the reason why you would do that.
Right. I mean, right now in this country, most people don't want to vote. Why do they not want to vote? Because they don't feel like it does any value, and they don't really understand what's going on with it.
Sure.
Right? So, first off, if you have politicians that make promises they don't deliver on, and I don't care what side of the aisle you are, if they don't deliver for you and you vote for them, then I would expect you to not vote for that party on the next round. But that isn't how our system works, because we're taught that we have to be one thing or another. It's like if you're in South Carolina, I live in South Carolina. That's where we're doing this interview. And if I wanted to run as a Democrat, there were 5 Democrats on the primary choices, and that for all of everything in the state of South Carolina, there's only 5 Democrats that are running against Republicans. So what that effectively means is that the primary is the vote, because you're primarying Republicans, and that's the only place you can compete and possibly get elected. You have to be a Republican, right?
Well, it's the same for New York. If you look at New York, if you look at California,
you have to be a Democrat.
It's unfortunate, and that's why when people argue against the Electoral College and they say it should be population, do we want California and New York deciding national elections?
Right.
I would say no. I mean, not just because of my political beliefs one way or the other, but there's a lot of people that live between those 2 states.
Right.
That they should, what they want matters too.
Do you think there's an actual fundamental difference between a Tammany Hall Democrat and a conservative Republican? Do you think there's really a difference between those 2?
You'd have to sit and break down issues with them and find things that they might agree on, but there's such polarizing things that are out there right now. The person who is extreme pro-life under any circumstances is not going to sit down with the person who is pro-abortion under any circumstances. I don't even know if they could have a conversation. And that's unfortunate, because if you can't sit down and talk to somebody and find common ground, then you just have 2 sides trenching in on something where nothing is going to get accomplished. And, and there's a lot of other issues with it.
When I know you've negotiated a few deals, how do you break the log jam when you're at odds?
Sometimes you don't, and sometimes you don't have a deal. Sometimes that's a walk away. Sometimes it's the person who's in the better position that can control how the deal comes out, but the other side comes away unsatisfied. The best kind of deal is where both parties feel like they got something. And, on a simple level, it used to be when you'd go in to buy a car and you could haggle on the price, and you'd walk out of there feeling like you got a deal. And I explain to my kids as I've helped them with that situation, even when you think you got a deal, I always picture the dealer sitting around laughing, going, that dumb bastard bought that car. And they're just thinking, we got over on another one.
Right.
But at least you felt like you got something. You could ask for the floor mats. You could ask for the fabric protection. Now you can't ask for anything. So it's a different thing. Both sides have to come away feeling like they got something. And, without giving too much politics away, one of the things I hated during the last administration, when President Trump would meet with Democrats, he would come out and talk about how much they loved him and how great he was. Well, what is he doing? He's making them look stupid. That's not a negotiation.
Right.
Somebody who comes out with dignity and says, we had a great conversation and both sides got out their thoughts, now you have something where you can work with, because both people can go back to their groups and have a conversation.
Right.
But if one side trenches in and says, hey, it's my way or the highway, you see it with sports, with the athletes are now gaining the upper hand and getting hundreds of millions of dollars. it changes it.
Right. It seems do you have hope for the future? Do you think that are you more optimistic about what your children will get to deal with, or are you pessimistic about what your children are going to get to deal with?
I worry about what they're going to have to deal with, because I don't see us coming together. I see us being driven more apart. I think special interests and people who are trenched in on something that matters to them don't even care what other people think about it. It's their issue, and that's all there is. Mm-hmm. And I think that I worry about the next generation, and do I see the end of mankind from all this? No, I think we're smart, resilient people, and every generation. If you look at complaints from people back in the Stone Age, and you read about that stuff, they were complaining about some of the same stuff. Right. It wasn't social media. It was, hey, the guy over in the next village. I mean, they had a different way of doing it, but problems are all, each problem is specific to that generation, and they've always existed, and we've always found our ways out of them. I just think things have gotten so ugly, and there's so much discourse over things that if you're screaming at each other, nothing's going to get done.
So then how... Just for the sake of argument, how do you step aside from your own desires to reach across to an opponent and to invite them into a mutually successful situation? Do you do that from a place of power? Do you do that from a sense of mutual respect as humans? Should you ever come out the loser in a deal? Like, certain people claim they never come out the loser in the deal, I
think you should be able to come out and say, I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got the essence of what was important here. And the other side can come out with something too. Because I think if it's all or nothing, there's always going to be bitter people that got left behind and weren't involved in the process. And I don't think that's how a negotiation works. I've been a worker at companies where the company has acted like they care about your opinion, mm-hmm. and it's lip service, and it doesn't matter. And then I've worked at places where they actually cared, and you're made to feel like you matter. And I think if two sides are going to negotiate, but what do we see now? And our leaders from the top are horrible examples. I'm not talking about the presidential level, just our senators and our congressmen, mm-hmm. the way they just pile on each other, the way there's no sense of, well, let's do what's good for everybody. Let's just find some common ground. We can do one thing that's good, one thing that's bad. You can't have everything your way, and it makes it very hard if people aren't willing to give a little bit.
So I wonder, is there a consistent national identity enough to have a middle ground? In other words, right now I look at the map politically, and I see blue and I see red, and I don't see enough purple, right? Like if all things being given, you would think that there would be more purple than there is specifically red or blue.
Because the people in the middle don't make enough noise. It's I bet more people are in the middle than we realize, but the people on each end make the most noise, and so they get all the attention. They get the attention from all the cable news outfits and network news, and all the people are attracted to the things that are the noisiest. But I bet if you got everybody into a room and put certain things on the table, there's things a lot of people would agree on. How you get to that, I don't know.
What about, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. What about third-party options like Andrew Yang and the Ford Party?
He couldn't even win for mayor. I mean, it's like...
Well, that's true, but he was also being massively smeared by the media at the time. He doesn't even understand bodegas, as a guy that's lived in New York his whole life.
I think that a third party would be... I think what we need is the next iteration of the Tea Party, but it's getting people from the both parties that are in the middle, and that group saying, okay, look, we're tired of the fringes determining what happens. Let's do something that's more common for everybody else.
Yeah, but what is the cover for that? That sounds to me like a third party. You're saying a middle way party, a party that is built upon mutual uplift instead of mutual destruction.
Yeah, like if I had the answers, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would be running something big. I wouldn't have been available to you.
All right. Well, so I'm sure we could probably guess, but when you do vote, do you vote?
Yeah, I've never not voted.
Okay. When you vote, how do you vote? Do you vote for the person or do you vote for the party?
What I see is quite often the people that represent the party that I vote for represent more of what I stand for. But I'm getting to the point where I don't feel that way anymore. I'm sick of everybody. So I don't identify as much as I used to with a party. I want to care more about issues and specific things. And it makes it harder in big elections. You can make a difference on a local level by finding out. You see the yard signs all over your neighborhood. Find out who those people are. Don't just vote for them because you see their sign.
Right.
That could be a real dirtbag. That could be somebody that's fantastic that you don't know that you just have to find out about. But I think you can start there and try to get better people into office at the bigger level. As somebody who's always voted, I'm less interested in running down there now just because I can't stand anything that these guys are doing.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I definitely recommend your podcast. Go ahead and give us the audience.
It's called Tell Us How to Make It Better. And the idea is every week I interview somebody who has identified a problem and is doing something to make it better. They're not complaining. They're problem solvers. So that can be found at tellushowtomakeitbetter.com. It's on every podcast platform in humankind. And I hope people will check it out. And then the film, The Last House Standing, is on my website, thelasthousestanding.org. It's $3.99 if you rent the film on my website. But if you don't want to spend any money and help a poor film producer director out, it's for free on Tubi TV, Tubi TV. And you can watch it on there for nothing. So your choice is it worth $4 to not watch commercials?
At least you're giving me a straight pitch on why I should pay the $4.
I care more that people, I want to make money. Obviously, most filmmakers want to make some money, but we're realistic that everybody always assumes, well, you've got your film, just let everybody have it. If somebody can't afford to see it and they called me, I'd give them a pass to watch it for free. I really think it's more important that they see the film. I'm not going to get rich off this film. I think it's important that people see it. I'm just not putting it on YouTube like people have asked me to do, because then YouTube's making money from it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And that brings us to an end of another podcast. And thank you so much for the audience sticking with us, listening to us wander through. And thankfully, George has some golden pipes that makes it worthwhile. I always enjoy listening to your voice, even though I may think everything you're saying is complete nonsense.
But I appreciate you at least listening. Thank you.
Yeah.